Edit.
Welcome back. This is Eric Lindsay, professor of music. In our previous videos, we explored pitch on the piano and its representation on a musical staff. Now let's delve into how pitches are organized in tonal music, focusing specifically on scales and keys. So, what are scales? You might know scales are those things that, your piano teacher made you practice, and it was like about finger dexterity, right? They aren't just limited to those annoying practices. Scales are fundamental to melodies and harmonies in tonal music. Scales are a sequence of notes arranged in ascending or descending order, beginning and ending on the same letter name an octave apart. So a scale can be from A to A, from B flat to B flat, from D to D. If we just arrange the notes in an order going up and down, that is going to create a type of scale. When discussing scales, there are two main key concepts that we're focusing on. Number one is the tonic. Tonic is the first note of the scale. It's going to act as the central pitch or home base around which we build this scale. And the next one is going to be the intervals. Intervals are the specific distances between consecutive notes in our scale. The variation of these intervals is going to lead to different types of scales. Let's apply this in a concrete way. Let's look at the C major scale. Most of the adjacent notes of the C major scale are going to be separated by what we call a whole step. This occurs when two white keys are separated by a black key. In other words, when two notes are a whole step apart, there's another note between them, so C and D are separated by C sharp, for example. However, not all the white keys are separated by a black key. In these cases, we have what's called a half step or a semitone. This is the smallest distance between two notes on the piano. In the C major scale, there are only two half steps between E to F and from B to C. And these half steps are crucial because to ears trained in the Western tonal system, whenever we hear these two half steps in the scale, we strongly want them to resolve in a certain direction. That B, we really want to resolve upwards to C for our scale to sound complete. And for the same reason, the F, we are trained to hear it desire to resolve downward to E. We call that fourth note and the seventh note of our scales tendency tones because of the strong desire for them to resolve in a particular direction. And its desire towards resolution is the clearest way that we know where our tonic is of the scale. So the overall pattern of our C major scale is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. This pattern of whole and half steps is the DNA of the major scale. And we can use it to build a major scale starting on any note, not just C. For example, let's create a major scale on E, the E major scale. Do we just start on E and walk up the piano to the next E? Not so fast. This is indeed a scale, but it's a different scale. We call this the Phrygian scale, which is different from major scale because the half steps are in a different location. To turn this into a major scale starting on E, we need to follow the same whole step, half step pattern that makes the major scale. We'll begin on E. We'll follow the whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step pattern. This is a mixture of white and black keys. And on staff notation, we're going to use sharps to raise these pitches, making sure we're not repeating any of the same letter names. It's very important to note that every major scale needs to contain one and only one of each letter name. This is why we use F sharp, G sharp, C sharp, D sharp in E major, not G flat, A flat, D flat, and E flat. Even though they're the same piano keys, we do that because we're not going to duplicate an E flat and an E in the same scale. We're only going to use each one of these letters once. As we move around the piano, it's helpful to talk about this scale using terms that are not specific to certain pitches on the piano, but instead describing the relationships between notes of the scale. And to do that, we have two systems that we might use. Number one is the idea of scale degrees. These are numbered from 1 to 7, written as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's no 8. We're just going to return to 1 when we get to the next octave. In sheet music, the scale degrees are going to be indicated by a small caret or a pointed hat above the number. We also have functional names. Each scale degree of a scale is going to have a specific functional name. As we mentioned, the start of the scale is the tonic. The second scale degree is the supertonic. The third scale degree, the mediant. The fourth scale degree, the subdominant. Fifth scale degree, dominant. Sixth scale degree, submediant. and the 7th scale degree, the leading tone. These are the functional names in a major scale. Now, the scale degree 7 is called the leading tone because, as we determined earlier, it is that strong desire to lead up to the tonic, especially when we harmonize it with chords. This concept is going to be even more significant when we start talking about minor scales. So let's practice and see if we're able to build a major scale starting on any note. Let's try doing it on A flat. Remember, look at that arrangement of whole and half steps to create that scale, and ensure we're using only one of each letter name. Let's go ahead and build it out. Here's your starting pitch. Go ahead and do the rest of these and unpause the video when you're done. So, I find it helpful to look at this piano to help us gauge, because notice that the staff doesn't include any instance of where a half step or a whole step is. We just have lines and spaces. That's why it's kind of helpful to visualize the scale of on a piano, to visualize where do we have a space between these black keys. So starting on an A flat, a whole step above A flat is going to be B flat. Then the next whole step is going to involve B flat, skipping that B natural, to C. So those are our two first whole steps. Our first half step is going to involve the D flat, which is just the adjacent note above C. Then we'll go whole step above D flat to E flat. We need another whole step, E flat to F, followed by our last whole step, F to G, and then lo and behold, that G is just a semitone beneath A flat, an octave above. As we progress through our music theory studies, memorizing all the major scales and how we spell them is going to be very crucial. And fortunately, we have an easier method than just counting whole steps and half steps to create scales. To understand them, we'll need to talk about key signatures. And we can quickly learn all 15 major scales exploring this method. And we're going to start diving into this method in the next video of this series. Hope to see you there.